Hi everyone, today we're going to talk about using games in the ESL classroom. First, let's look at the definition of game. What is a game? Here it says games are fun activities that promote interaction, thinking, learning, and problem solving. Often, games have an aspect that permit the players to produce information in a short period of time. And they may also require the players to engage in physical activity or might have a mental challenge in order for them to advance to the next level. Why should games be used in the language classroom? Well, the language classroom is a perfect place for games. And here I want to quote Martison and Chu. And they said that games are effective tools for learning because they offer students a hypothetical environment in which they can explore alternative decisions without the risk of failure. Thought and action are combined into purposeful behavior to accomplish a goal. By playing games, students learn how to strategize, to consider alternatives, and to think flexibly. We also all know that students enjoy playing games. It helps them to relax, it helps them to build camaraderie with their colleagues, and it gives them a sense of competition, which forces them to think outside of the box to do their best. So, let's think about this sentence. Games allow for creativity, independence, and higher order thinking skills. We're always talking about the higher order thinking skills. This is something that teachers should always address, the ability for students to evaluate, synthesize, or analyze some information. And many games can have that activity. For example, students might be answering questions on a bingo game, or they might also be answering questions for an adapted Candyland game. Perhaps for each color, you put a question, and they have to think deeply about that question. This could also be adapted for Snakes and Ladders or any other board games that you might have grown up with as a child. Games definitely have a purpose, and getting students to address their higher order thinking skills is very important. Here it says also, games reinforce the multiple intelligences. And you all know that I'm a big fan of trying to address as many LMIs as possible when you're teaching. So this includes the kinesthetic, the linguistic, the mathematical, but also the naturalistic, the interpersonal, intrapersonal skills as well too. Obviously, if it's a team game, it's going to help to address the interpersonal. People have to work together in order to play. If you're answering some verbal questions, it helps to address the linguistic skills. You could also integrate some type of math with word problems, and that will help to address the mathematical and scientific skills, the logical skills. What are some other ways that you think games can help address the multiple intelligences? I'm going to leave you a place to address this issue later in a Moodle Forum. So, if we're saying that games should be used in the classroom, is there any reason why games should not be used in the classroom? A lot of people tend to think that being competitive creates a hostile learning environment. But in fact, competition is part of our natural world. Students need to get used to it. They'll be competing for jobs, they'll be competing in sporting events, or they may even be competing to gain clients. Competition is healthy, and we should teach students that they don't have to win the game in order to learn, that the learning is part of the process. Sometimes students get angry and they say, "Oh, what did I win?" And if there's no prize, they might get frustrated. But I believe that you don't always have to give students a prize. Just letting them get a handshake or getting a high five might be enough for them. And here it says, be sure that students know that not every success in life has a tangible, immediate reward. They're not always going to get a candy or be able to leave class early. So they need to know that just succeeding at the game is part of life, that they're not always going to get an award. Now, let's think about some of the guidelines for using games in the classroom. First, the game should have a clear learning objective and purpose. For example, if I'm teaching a grammar point on, say, the past tense, then I would create questions or have a game where they're practicing the past tense. And I would make sure that the purpose of the game is clearly known to the students. Second, the teacher should assign students to teams. And I think it's better to randomly assign the students rather than to have the students assign themselves. This person thinks that random grouping is not recommended, but I think that random grouping is the fairest way. Number 3 says, be sure to explain all the procedures and rules clearly and slowly. That's very important because once the game has started, you don't want students to be confused about what's supposed to happen. And if communication breaks down, then the game will probably lose its interest to the students as well too. Be consistent. If you need a timer, make sure that everyone has the same amount of time. Don't start another round if all the teams have not had a chance to go before the class ends. You want to make sure that all the students get a chance to be a part of the game. Of course, you need to be prepared. Make sure that you have enough materials, time, and questions. It's not enough just to start the game, but you need to make sure that the game has a clear finish time as well too. Maintain a non-threatening environment. Make sure that students know that it's safe to be competitive and that they can call out even their wrong answers without any fear of penalty or being hurt. Sometimes you can have students create their own games, or at least the questions for their games. That's a really good way to empower students and let them feel the learning process. Remember, games allow the students to show a little of their personality, to build relationships with each other, and to practice skills. So try to show the students that you're interested in the games, and hopefully they will become interested in games. And remember, the more often you use games, the easier game facilitating becomes. Okay, you also were supposed to read in Oxford about different games and activities. I'd like for you to look at these different games and activities. They include icebreakers, lots of different icebreakers, have you ever type of games, word searches, 20 questions types of games that get students to talking and answering questions, hot seat, what's the word, what did you say, time bomb. So these are just 9 different examples of games that are in the book. You can also Google games and activities in the ESL classroom and find a slew of other games. Later in the Moodle Forum I was just talking about, I want you to leave a response about some of your favorite types of games. Okay, that's all for this screencast, and go on now to part 2, which is about the Moodle Forum.